you a member of the Communist Party? Or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
I'm framing my answer in the only way.
The question is, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
I have told you that I will offer my beliefs, my affiliations, and everything else to the American public, and they will know where I stand, as they do from what I have written.
Stand away from the stand.
For Americanism for many years, and I shall
stand away from the stand.
Fight for the Bill of Rights, which you are trying to destroy.
This man away from the stand.
I'm known because I was one of many victims of McCarthyism.
It's hard to describe what it was like during the Cold War if you were a radical. I think I was basically scared, physically scared, for years and years and years and years.
The mood of the country in the late 40s was very repressive, very anti-communist. Even peace activities, for example, the Stockholm Peace Appeal, became a suspect as being, pro-communist. McCarthy was in his heyday. The House Un-American Activities Committee, were in their heyday. I was a red diaper baby. My parents were communists. I grew up in a community in New York City in the Bronx called Little Moscow, in a co-op complex of 750 apartments in two big buildings called the Workers' Cooperative Colony, known everywhere as the Coops. By 1956, I had been working in Gary in the steel mill for 7 years. A long time, but I was kept there because the draw of seniority made it, sort of unthinkable to leave. So things started to happen. For one thing, by that time, the Communist Party in Gary was really ineffective, if it ever was effective, but it was barely meeting. People didn't know what to do. Nothing was happening. Then Khrushchev, did his revelations of Stalin's excesses and abuses, and that made me, as well as lots of other people, start thinking of, what's happening, what's going on within world communism, and why did the American Communist Party just, sort of accept all this without being super critical. And then to me, in December of '56, when the Red Army invaded Hungary and overthrew the Hungarian government, I questioned it at a Communist Party meeting. And the next morning, when I got to work and parked my car, 2 FBI agents accosted me and said, "Well, Ed, are you ready to talk to us now?"
I think that the Gary hearings were very important. They were very important because it was a bunch of working people who really, on the clearest grounds ever, the First Amendment, stood up against a repressive congressional committee. And the fact that of all of those, 11, many of whom took the First Amendment, they only even cited 4 and then only put 1 through trial.
One of the major purposes of holding these hearings is to destroy the labor movement. It was during this Cold War period that the labor movement started to become weaker and weaker and weaker, meaning their demands weren't met, meaning the American workers were not benefiting from the ability to organize. The American workers were not benefiting from getting improved working conditions and wages. And so you can argue that this was a Cold War against labor more than it was against communism.
I understood a lot about government repression all my life, and certainly understood about what the House Un-American Activities Committee was all about, which was to publicize themselves and make themselves absolutely essential, and to spread fear and divisiveness, to destroy the unions.
The committee wanted me to testify in open session. We believe, obviously, we can't say for sure, because they wanted the beginning of this hearing to make the first edition, the afternoon edition of the newspaper, because this kind of publicity was one of the things they wanted. I think they singled me out because, if you pardon the expression, I was young, I was bright, I was smart. They made a point of waving my college transcripts and saying, here he is, he had an A in differential calculus, which is a very tough, course, and he's working in a steel mill. Why would he do something like that?
A lot of people, once they saw what Eddie was doing, respected it very much. They didn't understand necessarily how he would put himself in that kind of jeopardy. People said, didn't you realize that was going to cost you financially and professionally and so on? And I don't think that was what we were thinking about. People did not like the repression, did not necessarily want to stand up against it, but were very aware of what Ed was doing and were extremely appreciative of it.
I know of no case where the First Amendment was used solely as the First Amendment and people not being convicted on that basis. However, by that time, there were enough people defying the committee. The Chicago 7, for example. I mean, they defied the committee by mocking the committee. The committee by then was so discredited that some people who chose not to answer questions were never cited for contempt of Congress or indicted, or other ways were found for them not, to have their convictions overturned. So there was a whole new atmosphere in the country as far as McCarthyism was concerned. And by 1964, the committee was sort of either mocked out of existence or disregarded, and finally Congress disbanded them.
Freedom of speech, freedom of association, that's what this country is supposed to be all about. There's a long history in this country of asserting your rights and of people and governments trying to take away your rights and needing to fight for them.
I mean, being a communist wasn't just, being for establishment of socialism. Being a communist was to be anti-racist. Very important to be anti-racist. Being a communist was important to be aware of the needs of the working people. And I like to believe, that principle, was part of my being and part of what kept me going. Standing up for principles was terribly important, and I like to believe I did it from the beginning to the end under all kinds of pressure.